Jeremy, thank you for joining us all the way from Seattle.
All the way from Seattle. Nick, I'm so excited to share some time with you and your people, the world pizza champion. I could not be in better company.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to have you here. We want to share your journey of entrepreneurship with our listeners. I think a lot of times we have a lot of different people on that are in different spots in their careers. Could you maybe start by telling us where you are in your career and then give us the backstory if you don't mind?
Sure. Well, maybe we can fast forward past that. I was born at a small town at a young age and all that jazz, right? But today as it sits, so I'm just outside Seattle, Washington. I manage a company called JB Capital. So it's a company that I started into the end of 2002, first of 2003. I have always been an entrepreneur, which means I'm generally unemployable pretty much anywhere else on earth, right? And so started this business in 2003, and the business then and how it's morphed today is we had started as an investment banking and kind of capital markets advisory, which means that we help companies that are navigating some type of nuance in the capital markets. It is go raise capital, solve problems, and the majority of that stuff had to do with money. And so it's a fancy way of saying we broker money. And so for the last near 20 years, we've worked on, advised, and placed nearly $1 billion in transactions. It is for growing companies throughout the country, from real estate projects to software businesses to restaurant chains to a whole bunch of stuff. We've met a beautiful collection of people. And then over the last year, we've made the election. It is to move out of the banking and advisory world and incept now our version of what you would call a private bank. And so now, rather than advising and working with other bankers and lenders and wealthy families through the country, it is to help them. We're now doing that off of my balance sheet and my investors' balance sheet, and having a little bit closer tie to the companies it is throughout the country that we're investing in. And so we're doing great things with good people, and excited to see about where things are going.
So do you buy companies as well, or do you brokers the money for companies?
No. So historically, we have been in the, you got guys that broker money and, for mortgages and broker real estate and that kind of thing. We would purely act as an investment banker or an advisor. So if it's, Nick and Jeremy's restaurant business or software business or whatever we do, as those companies are now at an inflection point to where they're looking to grow and they want to buy their competitor or open a new office or develop a new product or one thing or another, ultimately all that stuff takes money. And so when your bank and your rich uncle won't call you back, where do you go? And so we would be that kind of sage or advisor, counselor, consigliere of sorts it is to help them kind of navigate the ideas of what capital looks like, what your options are, and how to put it together, and then would ultimately help them go find that capital. So that historically had been our business, and loved it. We had made the election. It is to now begin to do that for ourselves. So rather than brokering money, we're investing as a principal, which means we're investing my money and my investors' money directly rather than acting as a broker. So we don't buy companies. We act as a private lender. So I would be like a private version of a local commercial bank for you, or somebody's rich uncle that loans money.
So you're Shark Tank before Shark Tank.
I don't know, something like that. Those guys are richer and better looking than I am. Well, I don't know. They may be richer. I don't know about better looking, but they invest at different stages of business. So for us, we don't do good idea on a cocktail napkin. So some of the stuff in Shark Tank is a little early and a little consumer centric, and we'll look at consumer products companies or specialty foods companies and that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff that you see on there, but most of those businesses are probably too small for us. And so the value that we saw is that there's a tremendous amount of companies through the country that don't quite fit what the bank can do for whatever reason, right? And they're not yet to a point to where any of the guys that you read about in the newspapers on Wall Street that have, $1 billion here and $2 billion here and $5 billion here, those guys really can't afford to pay attention to you, right? So for the companies that don't need to borrow 100 million or raise 100 million, they need $2 million, or they need 3 or 5 or 6. You're kind of in that stage to where you might be smarter than your local banker, you know, your attorney and your brother and your CPA and all these guys are great, and they're well-meaning, but oftentimes they're kind of ineffective when it comes down to how to source capital. And so when you're past that phase and the bank can't really help, and the real guys that have real money, you know, you don't move the needle for them. We kind of serve that market to help those guys kind of get to the next step in their business. And because there's a hell of a lot more guys that need to borrow 5 million than need to borrow 100 million.
Do you find yourself in any particular industries, or are you spread out over a lot of different ones?
You know, the reality is that when our filing goes out, which means, you know, what it is that we report to the SEC for where we exist, we can lend anywhere in the United States and Canada. The reality is that the majority of our business is on the West Coast, because this is where we live and eat and breathe, and kids play soccer and wives go to dinner. And, well, wait a minute, I guess right now nobody's playing soccer. Nobody's going to dinner. Nobody, right? You know, under normal circumstances, right? That's sure. And so normally this is where the lion's share of our businesses are, but we look at companies all across the country. And so right now we invest in 4 buckets. So we invest in technology and technology-enabled services. So imagine companies that are using software, machine learning, or artificial intelligence to simplify old, boring business processes, right? We look at companies that are in traditional business and business services. So think about law firms, consulting practices, legal practices, insurance businesses, that kind of thing. But then also companies that are maybe in a specialty food or specialty snack business. We've done a bunch of beverage deals. We're looking at some consumer products companies for, you know, companies that do soaps and lotions and potions and shampoos and stuff like that sell through Target and Walmart and Costco and everywhere else. We look at those. And then the healthcare business I love. So I don't do biotech and life sciences and drug discovery. Number one, again, there's a hell of a lot more people that are smarter than me that understand that. There's a lot of regulation in that business. It takes a ton of dough, right? And historically, the process it is to getting something approved with the FDA has been, you know, years and years and years, right? Now we're seeing a fast forward of that with everything that's going on through COVID, that they're advancing those things. But historically, it takes tons of dough, tons of time, tons of regulation, and that's not our business. So I like what you call the healthcare MSA business. So Nick and Jeremy have, you know, 20 optometry clinics or dental practices or something in New York and New Jersey, and we want to expand some more of those. Love that kind of business. I love the med tech and the health tech business, and then we love the what you would call the telehealth business, right? Which has been growing for years and now is wildly popular because nobody can go see their doctor, right? And so now we're doing Zoom doctor appointments and, you know, all that kind of thing, right? So that's kind of where we invest. And so about 80% of our portfolio is there. And then we have maybe 15 to 20% of our portfolios allocated towards real estate securities of one kind or another. So we've seen a lot of cool things. We've seen a lot of stupid things. We've seen, you know, lots of people have lots of great ideas. And so hopefully it's our job to help them along the way.
So you get to see the deal behind the deal. You get to see the numbers. You get to see how everything works, how the founder story, the spreadsheets, their cash flows, ups and downs. Can you maybe help the listeners position themselves for when they go to get more capital? Like what are the things that they need to be doing in their business to be able to put themselves in a position to expand? Because I think a lot of times, you know, people think like mentally, like, hey, I'm ready to go open another store. I have the management team in place. But when they are on the back end of it, you know, they go to the bank and the banker really doesn't even want to talk to them. So how do they position themselves? And when does that thinking start to position themselves?
Fantastic question. So I think a couple things. I think one of the things that people need to understand is that there's, you know, kind of two kinds of business. There's you know, what it is that you would refer to as a lifestyle business, right? Like I'm building this business because, you know, maybe I bought myself a job through starting my business, or maybe I'm building this business it is because I enjoy it. And, you know, a lot of these businesses, you see, you know, somebody that's in the contracting business, they're a home builder, a plumber, an electrician, whatever it is, right? And they were sick of working for somebody, so they went out on their own. And, you know, 5 years later, they've got 15 guys working for them, and now they have a business when before it was just, I really enjoyed what it is that I'm doing, right? And so you look at a lot of those businesses like that, that start somewhere and go somewhere else that's not necessarily planned. And so for a lifestyle business, these are businesses it is that kind of happen organically like that. And so most of these entrepreneurs are, they're running their cars through it, their boat through it, their vacation through it, they're riding off their wife, their dog, whatever it is that they can do, right? They're maximizing every deduction it is that they have on their balance sheet, because they're not going to sell the business. They're enjoying the business and the lifestyle of having that type of business. And so you call that like a lifestyle business. Then there's businesses it is that you are building the business with the intent it is to maximize your balance sheet. Like, I want to grow revenue as much, as big, as fast, as hard as I can. I want to drive profit to the bottom line as hard as I can. I'm minimizing expenses, and I'm going to run this thing for 2 years or 5 years or 10 years or whatever it is. And then I'm going to look for a liquidity event. I'm going to pull the ripcord and make a bunch of money and be on the cover of magazines and ride off in the sunset, or, whatever your game plan is, right? And so I think it starts that you need to understand which one of those guys you are. Because for the lifestyle business, there's sources of capital it is that are not going to invest in that business or not find that attractive. So I think number one, you decide kind of which bucket you're in there, right? And then number two, there's ways it is that you can kind of prepare yourself and get ready to go raise capital, but it's really, I think, kind of important to understand, number one, are you raising debt money, or are you raising equity money? Like, are you just going to go borrow money, and whether it's from a bank or your rich uncle, or are you just going to borrow money, or are you looking to raise money and bring in money and give up a part of your business? And so one of the things that we've always said is debt is like dating and equity is like marriage, right? And so all of us know somebody it is who has been married, who happened to marry the wrong person, and it becomes the bane of their existence. And it's just a giant pain in the ass, right? And so in breaking up at some period of time, or going through a divorce in that marriage, it affects your business, it affects your finance, it affects your kids, it affects your psyche, it affects freaking everything, right? And that can be often like picking the wrong business partner, right? Is that if ever there's a time to where it is that you have to get a divorce, like it could kill the business, right? Like, it could kill the whole thing because it's so much of a pain in the ass. And so I think for a lot of people, you need to understand, are you looking for an equity partner? Are you looking for, debt? You're just looking to borrow money. And it can make sense both ways, right? And so for me, I've always been a fan of debt. I've always been a fan of dating. The only person I want to be married to is my wife, right? And I'm still trying to convince her to keep me around, right? So the debt side of things for most people, whether it's a bank or a rich uncle or a private guy like me, it is that's loaning you money, is that after a year or two, if you keep liking each other, you can keep dating. And if you don't like each other, well, I don't have to ask you out next Friday night and I can go out with somebody else, right? Those conversations are more difficult if you pick the wrong, marriage partner, business partner, equity partner. So for those guys that are just going out to borrow money, I think it's important for them to understand your audience, right? Because a bank is going to have a different risk spectrum and a different return expectation than maybe your brother-in-law or your rich uncle or the rich guy down the street's going to. And those two guys are going to be different than, the local angel investor or local rich guy that loans money to companies. And so I think you need to understand your audience, because how you tell your story is going to be a hell of a lot different depending upon the audience it is that you're with. So how you frame that has everything to do with it. So understand which business you're in. Are you in a lifestyle business, or are you in a business that you're growing with the intent to sell? Then understand when you're going out for money, are you planning on giving up a part of your business, or are you just going to borrow money for a little bit? And then if you're going to borrow money, you need to know your audience, like who's the right audience for you. And those things, I think, candidly, are critical for folks it is as they begin to explore those conversations for, hey, I'd like to bring some money into my business.
What about the lifestyle guy that eventually they did exactly what you said. They didn't want to work for anybody else, so they start their own thing. 5 years down the road, they have, you know, the 15 guys that work for them. You know, fast forward another 10 or 15 years down the road, and now they have, you know, they built a nice life. You know, they built a nice life for themselves. They've got the house they want, the boat they want, and they say, you know what, I just don't want to do this anymore, and they want to sell it. Like, how does that, you know, but they have throughout the years maybe not shown the perfect balance sheet. Like, how do you see that? Like, have you seen that? Like, how would you coach somebody
Tons.
like that? How? Yeah,
tons.
like,
and so along the way, whether it's a lifestyle business or not, right? Nick and Jeremy's software company, Nick and Jeremy's pizza business, it doesn't matter what it is, right? But there comes a point in time to where it is that a lot of small businesses run into this exact question it is that you're asking.
Yep.
And for most small businesses, you know, they run into the situation to where they're either, you know, there's oftentimes not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? You've had a little bit of the pot of gold along the way, like you said, you know, with the life and the lifestyle and the boat and the house and cars and vacations and all that kind of stuff, right? But when it comes time to figure out a way to hang it up or to maybe slow down, is that you run into a couple situations. Number one, you either look to sell it to your employees, right? Like, do I have somebody in the team that's been with me for 10 years or 20 years or something like that would love to have a bigger part of what it is that we're doing here, right? And could I work on maybe a transition plan for half or better of the business it is to translate to, you know, generation 2 or my senior manager or whatever it is? That's what a lot of people do. You know, can I put something together for my senior guys or my employees to transition this? Number two, are there anybody that are competitors in my business, you know, or guys across the street, across town in a different market or whatever it is that would like to expand, right? Guys that are familial and that it makes sense or it's accretive to them to expand their footprint by taking over my business or me taking over theirs. That's the second thing. The third thing is, oftentimes for people it is, you can sell to another lifestyle guy, right? Somebody else in the market it is that's trying to get out of corporate America or trying to get out of his big job, and he wants something it is that just seems a little more fun. There's ways to do that. If you can't find out one of those three, oftentimes guys just eventually get tired of coming in. They just don't turn the lights on one morning because it's just, shit, man, I'm just tired. I've been doing this 20 years and I need a day off, you know?
that's the guys I like to buy off of.
Yeah,
it is for
right.
real.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's really a lot of the options, I think, for people when it is, you know, part of your question is that how for those guys that have been going through that and writing off their wife and their dog and their boat and everything else, it's really important it is to go through and making sure it is that you're bringing in good professionals around you. You need to make sure it is that you got a good attorney. You make sure it is that you got a good CPA. And so there's things it is that you can do to add back. And so if normally it is you've been pulling out a big salary or you've been writing off, you know, everything under the sun in the business, there's ways it is to look at a pro forma of your business it is by taking and adding those things back into the balance sheet that maybe somebody who is not looking at this as a lifestyle business wants to see what the real actual earnings of the business are. And so if you did $10 million in sales and it shows that you only made 400 grand, but if I go back and I add in that I'm paying myself, you know, 100 or 200 or $500,000 a year, and I'm writing off this and writing off that, and I've got a fleet of cars and I've got, you know, whatever it is, I can put that stuff back in. Maybe actually the business is making $1 million for most people, right? And so how can you add that back in and show that? And so super, super important it is for businesses, whether they're just getting started or whether they've been around forever or whether they're looking at an exit, to make sure that you're organized. Just make sure it is that you have the right attorney, the right CFO, the right type of reporting. You know, if you're not big enough, you don't have to go get audited financials, but if you're getting to a point to where you're looking at bringing in money, whether it's from a banker or some rich guy or a private credit guy like me, the level of financial reporting that you have is just critical. It's just critical.
How do you recommend people find the right CPA or the right attorney? You know, I understand the importance of those. I think when people, you know, you had mentioned real quick that, you know, very smart on not wanting any partners besides, yourself, or like you said. But, when you realize that you need other people on your team, it's not just the people that work for you, but it is the CPAs, the attorneys, people behind the scenes to help make sure that financially you're moving in the right direction. But how do you find that right person? Is it all off of somebody's recommendation, or is there a way to interview those type of people, or how do you recommend that you find the right CPA or right attorney?
Yeah, no, great question. And so, you wish sometimes it is that there was like a trip advisor for attorneys and CPAs, right? So
Sure.
I know for attorneys, there's actually a company headquartered out of Seattle called Avvo, AVVO, and they almost provide like a trip advisor Expedia type experience that says, I need an attorney that specializes in restaurants, beverages, software technology, XYZ, or I need a divorce attorney. My husband or wife is trying to, rake me through the coals, right? I know Avvo does that. I don't know if there is, and it's AVVO. I don't know if there's a CPA version of that. There may be. But, for me, historically, it's been, my network, right? Like you've been in business 20 years and you meet other entrepreneurs, other business owners, other professionals it is. And so the best source of any of that, rather, than going to the net and reading reviews and this kind of a thing, is the people around you, or the people you may know in a similar space that have had a tremendous experience with Joe, the attorney across town, or Bob, the CPA across town, and ask them hard questions, right? Like as much as they want your business, they're competing for your business, right? And so if you're in the restaurant business or software business or money business or whatever it is that you do, I need somebody it is that looks like this, right? I mean, it's an interview process for you. They're competing for your business. So ask them the hard questions and why it is that they're the best CPA or attorney or advisor it is for you. And how have you helped other clients it is that have been in my business? It is avoid pitfalls or make good decisions or get organized and so on and so forth, right? And ask them for those things. And then, ask them how it is that they like to communicate, how it is that they like to work. I mean, it's just like dating and finding a spouse, right? Is that never pick the first person. Always go get 2 or 3, and the 2 or 3 people it is that you talk to are either going to validate or invalidate the other 1 or 2 people it is that you met, right? You're going to meet 3 guys. They're all going to tell you wonderful things, but you're just something's going to click with one of them that makes it better, right? And so look on the net, right? See who it is that you know, and then leverage your personal network, whether it's LinkedIn or guys in the business or anything else, to find out who they're using. Ask them, if you get down to the 3 guys it is that you're super excited about and you think you're going to make a decision, go out to the market, right? Go out and just, Nick, hey, I'm getting ready to make a decision. I think I'm going to hire Joe over here at ABC CPA firm. You ever worked with this guy before? You know anybody? What have you heard from him? Right? Like, so again, it's that last kind of validation there it is to have somebody, help out with those things. That's what I would do. That's how we've historically done it when we're raising money and looking at companies. When I get down to the fact that says, okay, great, I'm super excited about ABC company, whatever it is, I diligence them as much as I can. I go through background checks on all of the principles. I look at different insurance practices it is to help protect my investment. And then I go out and I'm wanting to pull their customers. I'm wanting to look at them on social media. What do people say about them? Do they like them, love them, hate them, think they're ugly, think they're stupid, think they're great, whatever it is, right? I'm looking for all of that kind of external, either reinforcement or something that gives me pause, right? So those are the things that I would do.
So I think the other thing to mention with the attorneys is, a lot of people will ask me when I'm on different shows, will say, what's the biggest mistake you've made in business? And I think for me, it was not realizing that lawyers specialize in different things. So there's times where, you think you just need a lawyer. So you ask, somebody, a friend of a family, oh yeah, this is a great lawyer. And meanwhile, he's a DUI lawyer, not a real estate lawyer or a business deal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's important too, right? To make sure you
critical.
Yeah, critical, right. And would you say same with CPAs? Like if you're a restaurant, you probably want a restaurant CPA. If you're a real estate guy, you probably want a real estate CPA. Like, or do you think?
Sure. I mean, so just like there's, doctors, right? You got doctors it is that specialize in 20 different things. Attorneys will do the same thing. CPAs, you'll have a CPA firm it is, and so that firm may have 20 CPAs in there it is that are practicing. But you may have a specific CPA within the firm that specializes in real estate or trusts or restaurants or whatever it is, right? And so it's getting down and refining as much as you can to find out who has experience, at the practice it is of whatever it is that your business is, right? Because I'm not paying for your education, right? I'm not paying you $250 an hour to kind of figure shit out, right? Like the goal here is to get you to a point to where it is that we're walking through and you're helping me make these decisions, and I'm making decisions provided by your counsel. And so I need to know that your counsel is not just something you read in a book or you read online or you think might be a good idea, or it sounds like this is probably the way to do it. I want to know it is that you've seen that, put that in practice, and seen the other side of it 10 times before it is that I'm coming through and saying, okay, let's go that way.
I would think another thing you get to see a lot of is negotiating. Is that a fair assumption that you see a lot of negotiating?
Yeah, without a doubt, because people are people, right? And I can stand in the mirror long enough and convince myself I'm good looking. It doesn't mean it's true, right? And so for every entrepreneur out there, regardless, you, me, all of us, right? Everybody it is that's listening. Most entrepreneurs are like dads, right? Every dad thinks his kid should be on a Wheaties box, right? Like every entrepreneur thinks it is that they're the latest thing since sliced bread. Every real estate guy thinks that his building is the cleanest and the coolest and the shiniest and everything else. And it may be true and it may be not. But as entrepreneurs, you have to think that way, right? You have to have a degree of insanity or a perverted, view of reality. Otherwise, none of us would be here, right? And so because of which the guys that are on the other side of the equation that you're either doing business with or that you're borrowing money from or raising money from, right? They don't have that same perverse mentality. They're looking at things differently. And so as a result of which there's this tennis match of back and forth of coming to an agreement.
Do you always let your numbers decide if you're going to go ahead and invest in a company, or do you sometimes let your gut guide you as well?
I mean, the gut is the driving force it is for me, right? I mean, so now you can't make a decision on a gut and not have numbers to back it up, but I've seen businesses that look great on paper that I just couldn't stand the people, right? Like ultimately at the end of the day, you're investing in the people, because I can have a business that's profitable, that's doing well, that's everything else, but if the leadership of the organization is contentious and cantankerous and not enjoyable to be around, and they don't take counsel, and we're just a check to them, it's just great, I'm loaning you $5 million and I'll see you in 2 years when you're done. Like, that's not a good experience for anybody. And so much of it for us is really getting behind the story of what the company's trying to do. What are you hoping to do? How did this thing start? Where are you at now? What are the points of kind of conflict and consternation it is that you're running into? How is capital going to solve that? And then diving into kind of the balance sheet to back up what it is that they're saying. And then, ultimately, do I think it is that my capital can help them? And do they have a realistic expectation of what capital is going to cost and what it's going to work and what it's going to be like, that you're going to have to be stuck talking to me and my team once a month, but we're here to help you. And are you okay with that? And then ultimately too, after all of that, even if we come to an agreement, do I think it is that, if not me, the combination of myself and my team, do I actually think it is that we can provide more than just capital to the company? Do I think it is that we can guide you and your leadership team it is to get to point B, right? So the numbers are the numbers, but the numbers are not nearly as important to the people. I would much rather bet on a person it is whose numbers are okay, but I love the guy running the business and he's going to take our counsel and we can work with him and guide him and help him grow. I would invest in that guy 10 times over the guy that's a jerk to do business with, but his numbers are really good.
So you're looking for the listener too, somebody that you can tell is actually taking your advice, and when you're going through this process, that they're understanding what you're saying and they're asking questions and they're involved in the process. They're just not they're maybe pitting you up against somebody else trying to give them money. Is that kind of fair to say that?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it is that folks are not just talking to me, right? It's that it's, you know, I'm either going to give them money or they're not going to get it, right? Because I want them having a different perspective. I want them to have the feeling it is that they've talked to me and that they've talked to two other guys. Because candidly, I think that we have the single best credit strategy in the country right now. And so there may be guys that have more money than me or better looking than me or done more deals than me or anything else. And okay, that's fine. But I don't think it is that there's somebody that I've met so far that takes the same type of hands-on familial approach it is to coming alongside you and making sure that you don't step on landmines, right? So you don't have to, just because I give you my opinion or advice on a deal for the companies that we've invested in, doesn't mean you have to take it, right? Like it's still their business, right? Like, again, this is the difference of, we don't buy companies, and I'm not an equity investor in a company. I'm renting you money, right? I'm just a lender, but I'm a very hands-on approach to lending, which means it is that, you know, for like our last portfolio company, they were looking for a kind of an executive vice president of sales with a certain skill set. And we had flown out to Denver and met with them a couple of times, and this kept coming up and kept coming up. And we happened to have somebody, it is, in our network who was in Washington, D.C. It is that we flew out to come in and meet the company because I thought that this guy might be the guy. And so rather than them paying $50,000 or $60,000 for a recruiter, we fly this guy out on our dime. They meet with him, fall in love with the guy, and about 2 weeks later, it is that they hired him, right? And so as a lender and a partner to these guys, the minute it is that you take my money, you have 100% of me. You got my Rolodex, you got my phone, you got my contacts, you got my checkbook, you got everything it is that I need. If you're in town and need to stay in my house, you're staying in my house, right? You know, and so that's how it should be. And I don't find that people take that same level approach. They're out trying to put money out on the street. They're trying to earn fees. And if you screw it up, I'm coming after you, and I'm taking your wife and your kids and your dog and everything else, right? And I can't operate like that.
And I would think you have a lot of success working that way too, that, you know, you're involved and you can kind of, you don't get surprised as much as somebody else that's maybe hands off too. Can you also, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, with that same school of thought, is there a place where you see a lot of small businesses make big mistakes that they can't recover from? With your experience, like, is there mistakes that are common, but they're, you know, the kiss of death?
I think you have the kiss of death. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever been given was 22, 23 years ago. I remember where I was, I remember what I was wearing, and I remember the cigar I was smoking at the time, right? So I was in Greenwich, Connecticut. I was wearing a black trench coat. This is like October, November in Greenwich, and we're walking down Greenwich Avenue down close to the ferry, and I'm freezing my ass off, and it's like 11 o'clock at night. Everything was closed. We were going to try to go into, you know, some little something at the time, and having a cigar, talking to a friend, and we're just walking around, just talking and thinking out loud. And he came up in conversation. He said, Jeremy, as you're doing deals and as your business is growing, one of the biggest things it is that I can tell you to remember is the contracts are for the divorce. They're not for the marriage. And I was like, wow. And I think that all of us, as we start a business, grow a business, bring on a partner, open a new office, buy a product, you know, hire, you know, our first, you know, real employee and that kind of a thing. We all do that with romantic eyes. You have to. You're an entrepreneur, right? You have to have a degree of romance about what it is that you're doing, right? And so the biggest piece of advice there is that okay, well, we'll get to that part, right? Like, hey, I'm going to bring Nick on. I love Nick. Nick's a great guy. We've known each other forever, man. This is going to be great. I can't wait. And then 6 months later, a year later, 2 years later, you know, their interpretation of what you said and your interpretation of what it is that you said, there's a little bit of difference there. And it's so important it is that when you're putting things together, it is that you memorialize it, that you put stuff down on paper, right? Because once again, if there's ever a point in disagreement, you have something to refer back to say, hey, this is what it is that we agreed on, right? And so if I could tell people anything, it's, just like you're organizing your financing, you're organizing your thoughts, and you're being practical on these things. One of the biggest things it is that I've seen kill businesses is not understanding how valuable it is to put stuff down on paper and have that stuff executed, have your agreements executed, whether it's with your partners, your vendors, who you're borrowing money from, who you're bringing in as your first employee, whatever it happens to be. Because ultimately, if there's a disagreement, you're going to be held accountable to what it is that you guys wrote down on a piece of paper and signed.
And on the flip side of businesses that you've seen do extraordinarily well, businesses that you've loaned the money to and brokers money to that just have outperformed the expectations, is there a common denominator in their success?
They invest in great people. The reality is what's the old saying? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to get big, surround yourself with people, or something like that, right? And it really is the people around you, because as good as you are, as good as I am, right? I'm limited to what it is that I can do, because no matter how much I pray, God hasn't given us 25 hours in a day, right? And so I need other people around me, it is, to help extend. And so the businesses that I've seen that have grown, that have done well, that have been successful, have done two things. They've invested in great people around them, number one. And then number two is that they seek out counsel. They're never satisfied with, hey, last year we did this and this year we grew 20%. Okay, well, the guy across the street may have grown 50%, or the guy across town, or the guy across country. And so what are they doing, and how can I improve my game, and how can I sharpen my sword? How can I be a little bit better? They never get satisfied with that. And so they're always reading, researching, podcasting, looking, going to stuff like exactly this, like Nick, like your podcast, it is to source and find that information for what it is that they can do to get that one nugget, that one tool that makes them better. That's just critical.
Yeah, I think you're right. When it all goes back to, whether I'm in the pizza business or you're in the finance business, we're all in the people business. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, I was in the pizza business for 16 years before I did it for myself. And then in the last 8 years, we've opened up 5 shops. Really, it was about 5 in about 6.5 years. COVID wouldn't hit, we would have, the 6 stores a little bit on hold at the moment. But, people ask me all the time, like, how do we grow so fast? And I'm real quick to say it wasn't me. It's the team we've put around us, and I think sometimes in business, we don't realize that you do exactly that. You invest in people. I brought in key parts of my team before I could really, rather than taking the profits, I decided to invest it in my people. I could have maybe made an extra whatever their salary was for the year, but I decided, I need to bring in these people now at store 2 so that we can get to store 3, 4, and 5. So, we built out a team really at that point. And years when we had store 2 and store 3 and really even store 4, we didn't really see the profits we would have had because, we had 3, 4 district people that really didn't work in a store, but they were, the operations manager, the finance side of it, the marketing side of it. But now, we really positioned ourselves to grow. So, do you see that too, that, you have to build the infrastructure of people before you can really build? Do you see, like, the companies that you're looking at that want to go from 20 to 40 stores, they have to have some infrastructure in place before they can really grow with people?
Well, so yes and no. You've seen guys do it without it, but it's just a hell of a lot more painful. Again, ultimately, it doesn't matter the magician it is that you are in your business. It's still just you. And unless it is that you are transferring leadership, unless it is that you are grooming the next generation, you're going to work until you're dead. And that's not fair, right? And so there's a great book by John Maxwell called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, right? And he says, if you're an 8, no matter how good you are, you're never going to bring somebody up in your organization to be a 9, right? Because how are you going to teach what you can't do, right? And so not only as business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders is it so important for us to feed ourselves and continue to learn, is that if you can't do that, you're not going to be able to groom the people to become the leaders it is that you want and that you need in your organization, right? And so it's paramount. And so in addition to that, you continuing to feed your soul and continuing to grow and continue to learn. When you do that and you go from a 6 to a 7 or a 7 to an 8 or whatever it is, you actually become more attractive and start to attract better people to your organization because you've become better. And so those things for you, if you want to go from 2 stores to 20 stores, or you want to go from $1 million to 20 million, or you want to go from a small business in whatever town to, opening a national franchise, you're not going to get there with the same thought that got you here, right? Like something's got to change, right? And so people is critical.
What have you done during your career to get you to those next levels, to take yourself from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to all the way up?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is I have, for 20 years, I read books, I go to seminars, I listen to podcasts, I do as much as I can to just try to do mental push-ups, is what it is that you call it, right? Is just to do something in my brain to make me stronger, more learned, right? As much as I can. The other thing it is that, 20 years ago, it was probably unconscious. Now it's certainly more conscious. Is that everybody's heard the old saying of your network is your net worth, right? Like it again goes back to the value of people, right? And so I try as much as I can to, whether it's my personal network, my professional network, my LinkedIn network, my, kids, soccer dads, and, whoever it is, to do as much as I can to kind of contribute value to that network. Because ultimately for all of us, and this is the same stuff I'm coaching my eldest son on, who's getting ready to go to university, is that these are the people, or these are going to be the people it is that you're going to rely on. They're going to be your therapist when you're down and have a crappy day. They're going to be the guys that introduce you to who may be your spouse or your next employer, or that, help you look at a company, or that help you, meet somebody across the country it is that moves the needle for you. And it's critical to invest there. And so I feel like it is that I've done a very, very good job of making sure that not only am I feeding my brain and trying to get smarter and better and never satisfied, but I really try to make a conscious effort to sow into everybody that I meet. So even for the companies it is that we look at that we ultimately decide we're not going to provide capital to, is that I take them through a process and say, okay, look, I'm not your guy. And here's why. Here's what I like about you. Here's what you need to work on. But let me make an introduction to 2 or 3 guys it is that may be the guy. I don't care. I don't care whether it is that we do business, but I do care if we're friends, right? Like you don't have to take my money, but I do care that your experience with me was good. Because again, 20 years from now, I may not be in the money business. I may be selling sandwiches. And I want you to buy your sandwich from me, right? And you're going to remember how I treated you. And so it's just really doing the best it is that you can to try to contribute to somebody.
So going back to the advice you're giving your son for the university, do you believe that that like part of going to college is actually the relationships, right? Like of actually meeting people and getting out there? I know, and the reason I asked this is my daughter went off last year, freshman year, and I preached that to her the whole time she was going. I said, look, it's about the experience, about everybody that you meet. Get out there and join the clubs and do the different things and, meet people. And she called me halfway through and was talking, this test didn't go the way I wanted. And I said, well, are you meeting people? Are you having a good experience? She said, yeah, I'm meeting all kind of people. I'm in all these different things. I said, well, then you're doing just fine. The rest will work out for it. I said, but you want to, when you're there, you want to meet the people. You don't know that your roommate, 20 years down the line, whether they can come work for you or they've got an opportunity for you or whatever it may be, or like you said, may end up being your therapist and knows you better than anybody. Like how important are those relationships at a young age?
Pivotal, and I'm giving my son the same. So at first, the advice it is that you give your daughter is perfect, because the education and the experience you get at university is important. And yes, you want to learn about whatever you're studying, right? Whether it's marketing or economics or otherwise, you want to learn about that, right? But, you know, we've definitely moved into this world. I mean, when you and I are about the same age, and, you know, 20 or 25 years ago, you know, 30 years ago, when we're God, it just, the number kept getting bigger, right? 20 to 25 to 30. But, you know, as you know, 25, 30 years ago, when you're going through this, you know, there wasn't 1,000 podcasts, and there wasn't, you know, books on tapes and audiobooks and all of this stuff it is that make the learning and education experience easy. It wasn't nearly what it is now. There wasn't, you know, going online and going to YouTube and Khan Academy and all Udemy and all these 1,000 things that are there. See, I had to go to university. I think that there's value there. I'm not sure it is that the value is reflected in what actually university costs. And so the thing that is difficult to replace, and now our kids are going to school online or whatever is going to happen coming up, right? Yep. Is exactly what you said. It's the professors. It's the fraternities and sororities. It's the guest lectures it is that happen. It's the different clubs it is that are on campus. It's the, you know, we're going to go for a weekend away, and all of these relationships and connections and experiences it is that you begin to compile are critical. You know, it's just, it's critical. And so I'm giving my son the same advice, right? Is so helping him set up his LinkedIn, getting him on there, helping him understand that, showing him how it works. And he's like, it's not nearly as cool as Snapchat. Well, Snapchat sucks, right? You know, if you're not 18, here's how the rest of the world works, you know, right? And so walking him through that and understanding it is that how you can connect to people and how you can contribute to people, and that there's people it is that I have been friends with on LinkedIn for 20 years, right? That we've connected different, you know, deals or businesses or opportunities or otherwise, and that kind of a thing. And that it's important to sow into that. And you, for right now, if you're a freshman in college or just starting your career and that kind of thing, it's critical to invest there, right? Critical.
Yep. I think that's great advice. And my son is a junior, going to be a senior, and we're really, you know, going through virtual tours of colleges because you can't visit them right now. And, you know, and he asked the question, he really, you know, he's a culinary side, wants to go, you know, seeing the pizza world. He wants to go into the family business, I guess you could say. And he said, can I just, you know, keep learning from you? And can I go to all these different classes and, you know, learn how to make pizza here in Italy and there and stuff like that? And I said, look, you can do all that. I said, but you want to go to college because you want to go out and have the experience and meet the people. And I said, who knows, you know, your roommate could end up being on Food Network in 10 or 15 years as the #1 host. And, you know, and then your restaurant ends up being on Food Network and gets the deal. I said, that's how it works. Like the guy that you were hanging out with in college ends up being, you know, who knows, or you end up being that guy. And I think it's funny when you see a 18-year-old kid that, you know, the dad actually made a little bit of sense. They get quiet and start to think, you know.
I know. And then we run and tell our wives going, oh my God, I think you listened to me. Hallelujah. Yeah. Write the date and time down. Who knows?
That's it. Jeremy, I really appreciated our conversation today. I think a lot of great points out there for the entrepreneurs out there that are listening and want to get better and learn. A lot of great points out there. Where can they find you if they want to get more of you?
Sure. So you can find us on all the typical channels, right? And so whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, it's just JB Capital. Myself personally, Jeremy Hill on LinkedIn. And then coming up, starting here on August 1st, we're starting the Jeremy B. Hill Show podcast. That'll be, on Stitcher and Spotify and everywhere else coming up here in the next few weeks. And so you'll be able to check us out here coming up here in pretty soon.
But, you need a world pizza champion as a guest on there. I'll sign me up.
Dude, I can't wait. Pizza champion? Come on, man. Consider it done. Would love to have
Awesome. Now it's time we solve the equation to Jeremy's success. This is where I ask you 7 rapid-fire questions to solve the equation. We're looking for the keys to your success. Are you ready?
Maybe, but yes, okay. I'm ready. Let's go.
Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
Tony Robbins seminar.
Favorite item you bought recently under $100?
A microphone for my podcast.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you met in person.
That I've met in person. I don't know. Brain fart. Sorry.
Favorite book to give as a gift?
How They Started.
Something you do every morning before you brush your teeth?
Take a shower.
Your personal mantra or favorite quote?
Those who say it can't be done shouldn't get in the way of those that are doing it.
Place you go to decompress and reset?
My back porch.
And I've got to ask you, you get the number 8. You get the 8th question today. Favorite cigar?
Favorite cigar?
Yep.
So right now it's a Padron anniversary. So 25th anniversary Padron is my favorite cigar right now.
I have to look that one
not
up.
that, it's my father. My father, the Les Bijoux, is exceptional.
Thank you so much for being on, Jeremy. I really appreciate it. Great conversation today. And we'll talk to you very soon. Thanks so much.
Loved it, my friend. Thank you so much.